Well, it turns out that the United States intel agencies have been running tabletop exercises on this exact scenario. And now the Department of Homeland Security head Mayorkas says the greatest cyber threat to America is something called killware. So what's really going on here? Are we being set up for a massive false flag? And investigative journalist Whitney Webb has been writing about these cyber attack tabletop exercises for years. And she's been exposing what they've been up to. And then this week we had a crazy, quote unquote, cyber attack that seemed to shut down half the internet this week. Banks and Rumble was down. And what exactly is going on here? Are we being played like a fiddle? Whitney Webb joins us right now. Whitney, when you saw this big cyber attack unfolding this week, did you say, oh, here we go? Or is this maybe perhaps totally unrelated to your investigations?
Well, I would keep in mind, for those that may not remember, a few years ago, the head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, talked about a cyber pandemic, right?
Right.
Which implied that that there was to be in the near future what he described as something having significantly worse consequences for people worldwide than COVID. That was going to be, a cyber pandemic, meaning a series of cyber attacks. So I think that's essentially what's being foreshadowed here. And I think, we're, if we follow some other WEF warnings, like we talked about last time, it's quite possible that we'll be seeing an escalation of, what we've seen just this past week. But what matters also, and what doesn't get enough coverage, in my opinion, is how the attribution of who's allegedly responsible for these attacks. So if you look at the recent news that allege that some Chinese military linked group called Volt Typhoon was embedded in U.S. national infrastructure, the only sources for that cited in those reports as to why that group is deemed to be Chinese, and the only groups allegedly finding them in these national systems of critical importance nationally are groups like MAFTU, as we talked about last time, helped create the CTI League, and also the CISA agency. Their longtime head, though I don't think he's head anymore, but he was head at the time that agency was created, Chris Krebs, is former head of cybersecurity at Microsoft, and Microsoft also has a lot of connections to Cyber Reason, a group that's been doing a lot of these tabletop simulations that you referred to earlier. And then the other group besides Microsoft is called Recorded Future, and they were created with seed funding from Google Ventures and the CIA's In-Q-Tel. And they rarely, if ever, provide any direct evidence as to why a group is, Chinese or Iranian or North Korean or Russian. A lot of these groups, including, more notorious ones that blame stuff on Russian hackers during like the 2016 elections, like, CrowdStrike, for example, more often than not, they don't give any actual evidence. They say, we suspect, or this group behaves similarly to a group that is, of these various nationalities. And we need evidence, especially since WikiLeaks release of Vault 7, that the CIA and affiliated intelligence agencies in Five Eyes and beyond can blame any nation state they want by placing false fingerprints of various nation state actors in attacks, cyber attacks they actually conduct themselves. And the importance of that, when you're talking about attribution, is that, who's to blame for this catastrophic cyber attack? And it's very possible to have, an extreme psyop conducted on the American population that could push us into, World War III, which I think, the risk of that is much clearer to people now than it was even, a few months ago.
Yeah, Colonel Douglas McGregor on our show has openly pointed out he believes that they may end up canceling the 2024 election, that martial law will be put in place, that there will be some sort of move to push Biden into a martial law situation. The 2024 election would be canceled in some capacity, and it will be totally controlled. And of course, your reporting with these tabletop exercises seems to suggest that this need for martial law would come as a result of a massive cyber attack. So can you talk about these tabletop exercises and what these agencies have been planning? And I mean, it's amazing to me that they're literally planning it. They've got the paperwork. They've been running the operations. This is not a conspiracy theory. They're laying the groundwork for this.
Yes. So the exact scenario which Colonel McGregor discussed on your show has been simulated for years by the FBI, DHS, and various police departments, not just in the U.S., but also I believe they had one in the United Kingdom as well. And the company responsible for this is based in Boston. They're called Cybereason. They're a cybersecurity company with very overt ties to Israeli intelligence. And essentially what they conducted in this simulation was an attack on the election, but it wasn't an attack on election infrastructure. It was an attack on critical infrastructure and also things like hacking traffic lights to cause accidents and kill people in car accidents, hacking self-driving cars to run over people waiting in line to vote, and hacking power grid and all sorts of things like that. So why are they conducting simulations supposedly about election security, but there was nothing about voting machines or, election infrastructure at all? It was about just murdering innocent people and destroying critical infrastructure or, jamming it essentially. And then, not that long after, the head of DHS, Alexander Mayorkas, said that this exact type of hacks, which he referred to as killware, is going to be the next big cyber attack. Which of course is deeply unsettling. And even more unsettling is that Cybereason, the head of Cybereason, Lior Div, says that his work at Cybereason is a direct continuation of his service to Israel's Signal Intelligence Agency, Unit 8200. And while there, Lior Div specialized in offensive cyber attacks targeting other nations, not unlike Ohad Zaydenberg of the CTI League. And it's important to mind that the head of the Webb Partnership Against Cybercrime that's leading this push for a regulated internet due to a coming cyber attack on critical infrastructure and the financial system is an Israeli intelligence operative named Tal Goldstein that essentially created the model by which the companies that Ohad Zaydenberg and also Lior Div Cybereason follow essentially, basically, the policy Goldstein created back in 2012, while Netanyahu was prime minister back then, and of course still is now, is that Israeli cybersecurity operation or cyber operations that were previously conducted by Mossad or other Israeli intelligence agencies that used to be done in-house are now going to be done through private companies. And that same year, for example, 2012 is when Cybereason was created by Lior Div, who says that his Cybereason is a direct continuation of his work at Unit 8200, which was offensive attacks on other nations. So just really crazy when you again consider what we talked about last time, that Israeli intelligence has a deliberate policy of getting the U.S. to preemptively, or at least attack Iran first when they want to bring in a regional war into the fore. So
it's incredibly troubling. We think about when we know that they can place digital footprints, digital fingerprints on anything, and they can claim that, oh, it's Iran. Yep. The reason all of your banks are down, you can't get access to your monies because, Iran just launched a massive cyber attack. And we're telling you that that's the case because Israeli intelligence is telling us. How can we believe them at all? And then what are we to do? Launch some massive military strike against Iran?
And this is why evidence matters, because all of the companies essentially up to now that are being reported in mainstream media as the ones attributing blame to these nation states are either funded directly by the CIA or Unit 8200 or people related to these intelligence agencies.
People, wake up.
And we need better evidence than that.
Wake up. I mean, I hope people are paying attention to this, and people can yell and say whatever they want. They can say, that's anti-Semitic, whatever. Go, jump off a bridge. That's ridiculous.